Good evening.
This meeting is being recorded.
Good. Good evening. Welcome to a regular meeting of the Norwich Selectboard. This is Wednesday, August 9, 2023. My name is Marcia Calloway. I'm currently serving as chair. I'm joined tonight with board members Roger Arnold, Mary Layton, Vice Chair, Pamela Smith, Priscilla Vincent, and Interim Town Manager Brennan Duffy. This meeting is being held in the Tracy Hall meeting room and via Zoom with CATV Jam broadcasting live on YouTube. The agenda and packet materials were distributed via the Norwich listserv, and they're also available on the town website under the Select Board tab. Brennan is monitoring admission to the Zoom platform, and nobody will be admitted unless we can see a full name displayed on the screen. We always have a full agenda, so everyone must focus remarks in a loud voice, loud enough to be heard. And if the audience wants to talk to each other, I would ask that they please step out in the hall to do so. Everyone who wishes to speak must be recognized by the chair and address the chair. In-person attendees must come to the table in front of the board so that everyone can see you on Zoom and here. And participants using telephones should press *9 to raise their hand and *6 to unmute after being recognized to speak. The order will generally be select board members, then members of the public attending in person, then people participating remotely through Zoom or telephone. Per our rules of procedure from March of this year, the chair is allowed to suggest commenters conclude their remarks within 3 minutes. The agenda is divided into sections. Comments about a particular topic on the agenda should be offered during that section of the agenda. There is a public comment section for items not on the agenda, and I will let everyone know when we reach that section. So the first item on the agenda is the agenda. There are a couple of changes that we should make to it. I omitted an item for minutes, which need to be approved. So I would like to add that. And for ease, I'm suggesting add it as item 1A to avoid renumbering everything else. The second thing, I drafted the agenda not knowing if we had AP warrants. So we should correct agenda item 3 to simply read AP warrants. For agenda item 4, in addition to the DRB and Recreation Council applicants that are listed on the agenda, we have also, I think, what was it? Finance Committee. Finance. Thank you. So we should add that. Unless we have other errors or omissions or corrections to the agenda, may we have a motion to approve it, and then after that we can have further discussion.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Roger. And now discussion? Priscilla.
Me being much older than I look, I realize. This looks like an agenda that's going to go on for quite a while. And I'm wondering, could we please have a special meeting next week and put some of the things here on for next week?
We can discuss it. Which ones are you thinking?
Well, believe it or not, after what felt like a huge struggle to get it on this night's agenda, the Tracy Hall system. No, I'll tell you why if you want to know. I've been scrambling with Pam's assistance because we're in this together to try to put together a report for you. And we could have released it at 4 o'clock this afternoon, but I thought that's not a good plan because we'd like the public to see what's in it and we'd like you all to have a chance to mull it over too.
Is this in addition to what's been in correspondence?
Yes.
Well, if we did go an extra week, others of us could also respond with correspondence. There was some feedback about what you found. So it would work for me for that reason. I think it's hard administratively to keep doing the back-to-back meetings. I think it's hard in a way administratively because it means another agenda, eats up time in the town manager's office. I'm willing to consider it.
I just can't take.
What I'd like to do with that item tonight is sort of figure out where we are, not make decisions, but just because we had some motions in the past, I'm trying to understand where, and so I think that would be a good discussion to have.
I'm fine with that. You mentioned putting the minutes on here. I don't have minutes. They weren't in the packet.
No, they came, what?
They were posted on the listserv. I haven't had a chance to read them, but there are no minutes in the packet, so I would say we probably shouldn't try to approve them tonight.
So table them, well, actually, that would be
Just not add minutes to list.
we could amend that. Amend the amendment.
And I am in favor of a special meeting next week to talk about the Tracy Hall boiler and anything that we don't get to tonight. I honestly think that Roger's suggestion that we try to conclude our meetings by 10:30 is a good suggestion because it's getting to take its toll.
It is. I'm wondering, can we make that decision about next week when we get to that item?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll see at 10:30 where we are and what's left.
So check in.
Right. Then one of the things that we have to do is consult with the town manager's office because he knows what's coming in that we don't know about and what has to be, excuse me, dealt with. So if that's a light load, then we might not need an extra one. And if at all possible, I would like to avoid them. And I also want to avoid the 10:30 meeting. Midnight meetings. But I think we can maybe do that by being more focused in our attention. So shall we barrel forward or not? Does anyone want to make a motion to do otherwise, or do we want to just barrel forward and see where we are?
Let's keep going.
I'm a little concerned though about pushing out the Tracy Hall package until 2 weeks from now.
Yes.
I think that's important enough that we should meet if it's only that one item next week.
Well, let's hash out what we think happened with all those other votes that we had when we get to item 8, and then we can see if we need something next week. Roger?
Yeah. I think so fine that we don't need to meet next week. It's my hope, but we'll talk about it.
Okay. Anything else, which I think can be put into future agendas and addressed in due course? And that can be discussed in terms of the urgency in agenda setting. There's also, excuse me, I'm losing my voice, the Stantec presentation on Hemlock Road instability, which was presented last week by Stantec and is in this packet because it was too late for the packet last week. Is there a motion to approve the move by Mary? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Pam seconded. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. The third item is the AP warrant. And so do we have a motion to approve the AP warrant?
I move to approve AP warrant, excuse me, number 1015 in the amount of $267.54.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second. By Priscilla. Any discussion? All in favor? Four. Oops, sorry. These would be comments for anything that is not on the agenda. Is there any public comment? Please come to the table, Ms. Cook.
Hi, wondering if we could have a discussion about the price charges for stickers up at the transfer station and, kind of get a handle on that.
Okay. And so in particular, is it that the prices have gone up? What is it that you've experienced that you want to talk about?
Well, I think on July, I was getting a blue ticket. And then I realized other people are buying stickers and they're getting red ones. So that's one question I want to ask, what the difference is. Did I buy too early? But the sandwich board was up. And just, or if there are other concerns about either lost stickers or whatever and how the prices are adjusted or not.
And have you been able to use the blue ticket
Your sticker, right?
sticker?
Yeah. Well, I was repeatedly advised to buy a new sticker.
Oh.
But you bought one on July 1st.
Yes, and I have the check to show the date. I bought a sticker and I bought a ticket sheet of them. And I just, well, no, I just wondered what the difference, if I was just before, but it was out. Just see what that price really, a realistic one is, if it's lost damage, whatever. I mean, we have policies. I did a little research on it.
I think the price changed.
Hmm?
I don't think the price of the sticker changed this year. So it should be that you just buy the sticker and put it on your car and you're good to go. But it sounds like you don't have the correct color. But
That may be it.
it's fine, right?
Yeah, and also the price might be different on the actual cost of a lost or whatever one. I just looked at two policies that you all should have a chance to look at.
Did you think you lost it?
Hmm?
Did you lose your sticker? Or did you put it on your car? What happened to it?
Well, I don't know. It was on when I came in the transfer station, and when I left, it was not on it. So my car will always be locked up in the transfer station now. That was kind of weird.
Well, I think what we should do to start unraveling this is first you should figure out with the town clerk how much you need to pay for a replacement sticker, or if you do, because if you were given the wrong sticker, then
Well, I don't, do you have an
For
opinion?
town ordinance, it's $1 for a replacement sticker.
and then it's probably time that we had a sort of look at this, don't you think?
It could be. So topically, we have a expired contract with Casella Waste, who is the person that comes and takes the waste out of the transfer station. We had an agreement with them to kind of work off of the expired contract rates up until the end of August. And I've asked them to provide the new contract with the new rate sheet that they're going to be moving to on September 1st. So that would give us, assuming we would have that for the August 23rd meeting, we could look at that as far as I know, Casella Waste is really the only game in town. So I don't think there's a whole lot of negotiation there. But we should be aware that the rates, I think, are going up. And that might also be something to think about in budgeting for the price of a transfer sticker or the cost for removal of garbage out of the transfer station. That's going to go up. The town, I think, has always kind of reimbursed at some level the cost to the residents that are using that. But I don't know where that tipping point is, where suddenly we need to increase the cost to residents to compensate the increases. So,
I mean, there was a cost savings by the committee that suggested at the last contract that you could save on the food scraps. There is another company.
I'm aware of some of that. Not all of it. I think there isn't really a lot of flexibility there either from my
Mhm.
So let's ask Brennan and maybe the Solid Waste Committee to bring us some information for next time.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And meet Priscilla first.
To address Linda's concern, the stickers we put on our windows, I believe, have an expiration date, so you should be able to see through when your sticker is good. And also, they write down in their book in the track.
Brennan can find out. And
I purchased new stickers for our vehicles, and they are red. There's a blue one that needs to come off of the car that we used this past year. So a blue sticker is for last year. The other thing is, and I sent Brennan an email on this, I went to the town website, looked it up, and it said that my first vehicle would be $30, my second vehicle would be $10. So I went to the transfer station fully expecting to write a check for $40, and I was told that they were $35 each and that the website is out of date.
Yeah.
So I sent an email asking that at the earliest possible time that be updated, because it is a little disconcerting to get to the transfer station. Fortunately, I had written out my check in advance, but to write it for 70 instead of 40 was a little surprising.
so
I just wanted to June of 2022. So we've recently looked at this. And then I think you're right, Brennan, that we have 2 1-year extensions of the original 4-year agreement, and that's lapsed, but I'm not recalling that was that what from Rod's or his memo is indicated that you might have actually signed a new agreement, not an extension. Send whatever's in public.
I'm pretty confident, just to save you time, pretty confident that we expired this spring. It might have been May. March, could have been March. And then we were operating again under I signed with Casella after that had happened, that would get us through.
It's the luggage.
Oops, there you are.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Hi. Yeah, welcome.
Weird,
What-
but that's just the way it is. Thank you. So I wanted to comment on something I became aware of pretty recently, that I live on Turnpike Road. I live at 524 Turnpike Road, and very close to where my house is, there is a new parking lot for a trail that is being moved. I don't really understand what's going on, but there used to be a parking lot for the upper, it's like the sightline problems, and it's really does not feel like a good choice to have changed it. And I recently got emails from people on my street alerting us to this fact, and some people did some sightline measurements, and I know today was the last day apparently to like make an appeal, and so somebody was trying to make an appeal about it. And the issue is the neighbors on this street we were never notified about this in a realistic way. I feel like the first time I heard about it was like a month ago or 2, and apparently this was approved a year ago, and it's a pretty major change, and a lot of people on our street are very concerned because we have bikers and the rollerblader things and dog walkers and everybody on our street, and people drive very fast, and it just seems very dangerous. And I know somebody was in touch with Pam today about the appeals process, and also with Kyle, something or other. But I wanted to mention this issue and see if there was anything to be done about it, and or what the process was of notifying the people in the community that this change was happening. Because as a resident who walks up and down my street regularly, I have not seen signage. I did not see anything on the listserv, which I read regularly. And it feels like this was just done unilaterally. Thank you.
Thank you, Haley. Can you tell me who you think approved this?
So I have some emails that were sent to me by someone on my street. That it appears like it was approved by the Department of Public Works let me go back to, let's see what I can find here. Hold on just a second so I can make it bigger. Okay.
Haley, is it possible for you to collect all of the things that you received and send it to Brennan Duffy? He's at eduffy@norwich.vt.us.
Yes, I can do that. I can definitely do that.
We can start to unravel if that was an appropriate thing to have been done.
Okay, great. Thank you. I will do that. I can say that there was a permitting procedure, but it was truncated because it's an already existing trail. So the permitting procedure was not as robust as I think it is in other cases, but the parking lot's brand new.
Okay, so there was a parking lot, but it was moved.
Yes. And they moved it to a location that's way less safe and likely to cause a lot of problems.
Okay, good to know.
So it was, let me see. I just feel bad. I haven't spoken to the person who sent all the emails, and so I don't want to just like read her words without talking to
I
her.
think, Haley,
But
in
I can
the interest of
forward
time,
you the information.
yes, in the interest of time, send Brennan everything that you think is germane to this, and then he and I will be working on agenda stuff, and if it's something that needs to come here or somewhere else, because there's under statute, there's some things that the select board lays out, and then there's other things that don't go through the select board. So we need to figure out what was the correct process and help you understand that. And then if something needs to be changed, you can start to work through channels. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes. And the Pam who was spoken to was Pam Mullen, who from Norwich Planning and Zoning, not Pam Smith, which I misunderstood when I was.
That sounded like it would be sensible. All right. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, and you'll be hearing from us. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Roger has one question. Or
Just a question. I'm clarifying what I believe her comment was about. So this is the Brookmead parking lot, which now is effectively formally adjacent to Norwich Creamery or Norwich Farm Foundation. And they're moving that parking lot that provided access to that trail to the southern field along Turnpike Road, and the they is the Upper Valley Land Trust. So there's public-facing material on the Upper Valley Land Trust website. So that should be foregrounding her comments, just so we all know what we're talking about.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And my only concern is that if I didn't know to go to their website, I had no way to find out about this other than being notified by my neighbors.
Okay. Thank you, Haley. That's good information for us. All right. Any other comments tonight? Seeing none, we will move on to informational items. And the first thing that is on the list is the Hemlock Road update from our interim town manager.
All right, thank you. So as you know from the previous meeting, we have had some work with Stantec as an engineer to ascertain the situation around Hemlock Road, which they have prescribed as a imminent slope failure, believed to be due to the large amount of rainfall and flooding that occurred there on July 10th. So that's kind of the incident that has created this issue and this problem. So over the last 2 weeks, I've been working, actually more likely Chris Kaufman, our DPW director, has been working diligently trying to coordinate with the powers that be, and those are V-Trans primarily, and also the FEMA representatives that are now in the state working with the disaster relief to come up with some short-term solutions and some longer-term solutions. And Chris is actually on the call here, and I'll let him fill in any more relevant details as he sees fit. But in general, we've been trying to figure out a temporary access solution there that would allow folks that are living in those houses that were asked to vacate because the road couldn't be utilized. And to be honest, we have not had a great success today. As of today, we have a couple different opportunities or options that are being considered, but none of them seem very easy to implement. So I don't really have more to say about that than we're continuing to work on different options there. We also, and again, I'll let Chris speak a little more in detail about this, are working through the FEMA recommended procurement process. So we're now kind of out of the emergency phase. We are able to do things quickly with local contractors and then just document those. Because of the complexity of what we're dealing with on Hemlock Road, we were not obviously able to do things in the first week or two after that event. So we're now in kind of a longer term planning process, which is going to require some procurement, and we want to be very cautious and make sure that we're following the FEMA procurement process so that this town can be reimbursed for work. So I believe Chris can talk about this, but I think he's issued an RFP that would be trying to find some engineers to do some design and pricing work for the town. That would be, again, working off of one of these either short-term or longer-term solutions. And just to give people an idea of what we're talking about there, we have looked at the opportunity of trying to get some temporary bridges that would span the Pusik. Not even close. Pompey. I will stick with. There's about a 200-foot span there from an old bridge abutment across that would serve. Unfortunately, what we're hearing is that is a little bit too large a span for a temporary bridge. We also were trying to reach out to an abutting property owner that would maybe have an interest in allowing a short-term temporary road to go through their property. We've had no luck at all contacting the owner after several attempts. So that is, at least as of today, not likely. And then the other options were trying to do some type of a immediate shore up of the embankment, which would be working from the river to basically plant, solidifying materials. And that is still something that is possible. We don't really have a good timeline on that right now. And then the fourth and least likely option was to get some kind of a temporary exit and access or egress off of the interstate, which is right at the end there. That seems like a very difficult endeavor to get approval for. So I think that is the update I wanted to provide. I have been trying to keep in contact with the affected property owners. I sent out a revised memo last week, kind of talking about the options we're looking at, and everybody to date has been very, very gracious and very patient, knowing that we're working through some very complex issues as quickly as we can, but that we haven't had immediate answers. So that said, Chris Kaufman, would you like to add anything to that for an update?
I think you covered most of it, Brennan, but as you said, we're out of the emergency phase. We're in the permanent phase, which requires us to go through a procurement process of both engineering and construction services. And because of that, that is going to be a time-consuming process. And therefore, more than likely, we wouldn't have engineering options in front of us until later this year, which would put us on the heels of winter. And therefore, we wouldn't be actually probably getting something into place until the spring of or later next year. So realistically, that's what we're facing. And in terms of slope stability, reimbursement from FEMA, it's a complicated issue. They generally take a very hard look at slope stability issues. And so there's no guarantee that we are going to be, at what extent we would be reimbursed. So there is a complexity there, and we won't probably have those answers from FEMA until they have a team on site in the next number of weeks and have time to review the reports and the documents and ascertain their own input. So unfortunately, that we're going to have to move ahead, assuming, using the procurement process that we have with the town and the process we have to. Obviously, we're working as diligently and as quickly as we can to try to get folks back to these properties. But unfortunately, due to safety concerns with the slope, I don't think it's warranted, both from several based on input we've received from FEMA, based on input we've received from our consultant, that it is safe for vehicles to be on that road. Somebody did enter the road illegally and put debris on the road and filled in the significant crack that was on the slope. Unfortunately, they did that, and I believe that the police have determined out who those perpetrators were, and they're following up a criminal investigation with them. So I can't really speak much more about that because I don't know too much more about it. But unfortunately, that was done, and that unfortunately could complicate or possibly jeopardize FEMA funding. That was unfortunate. So I'm working with, I've been in touch with the Corps of Engineers. I've been in touch with A&R in terms of, if we have to put any sort of support in the riverway to help bolster and support the slope. But there's going to be some due process there with permitting and other options that we might have to consider would likely involve putting some debris in the river, and that would require a core permitting. So at this point, as Brendan mentioned, we're moving ahead with trying to get an engineer on board using our procurement process and trying to look at all our options from an engineering firm that's well qualified to make those decisions.
I'll open it to other people, but I know I have 3 questions for you, Chris, and 1 confirmation from Brennan. From Brennan, I'm hoping that all RFPs are going through your office.
Yeah, Chris and I worked on the RFP today. That's
good.
Well.
And then, Chris, I want to make it clear, I think I understand that we don't know that an intervening event like someone entering without authorization would prevent FEMA assistance, but it's a question.
It's a question.
We don't know. Right. And then I'm wondering if FEMA ever says this slope is ridiculous and it's not going to be workable. Do they ever say, oh, that's a case?
I didn't understand the question. Are you saying that they could?
I'm just wondering if there's a possibility that FEMA could look at the scenario and say the slope is not doesn't merit fixing because it's too precarious. It'll just happen again.
I think FEMA's position and since the last large flood was to make sure that they don't put back what was there, but to make it not just a replacement, but to make it better so that there is in fact no reoccurrence of that event. So yes, that is definitely one of the considerations that they look at now.
Okay. And my last question is about planting. Given how badly my garden has done this year, I'm thinking if you're thinking about planting organic material to hold that, I can't imagine that it would work.
No, it's not organic. We would be putting large riprap boulders in the waterway to help hold up the slope. So it would be that could be a temporary or that could be a permanent fix. Another permanent fix could be some sort of Hennessey wall, some sort of concrete. You've seen them before, kind of a supporting wall that holds up a slope. But we have to get something in place to keep the slope from potential imminent failure.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone else have questions, Pam?
I'm wondering, when you tried to contact the abutter, did you just try to do that via the phone?
No, I actually went out to the abutter's home a couple times.
Oh, wow. Okay. He's a very withdrawn individual. And if he doesn't know you, he probably wouldn't answer the door.
I left a memo with my contact info as well. So
if you would like, I can see
if you know the abutter and you could make an introduction.
Knows him very well.
Well, that would be appreciated.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been
I'll
trying.
ask him if he'd be willing to. I want to go over and take a look at the road myself. So maybe we'll drive over and see if we can chat with him.
That would be helpful if you can make a contact. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Anyone else? Yeah, Priscilla.
This is not exactly that, but while we have Chris on the call, can I ask about the dump paving project? Or not?
Yes.
I went last week and looked after I'd been to the dump and said, wow, this is rough here. And I saw that when I reviewed the contract that we have, the determination was made that our own DPW would do the removal of the material, the paving stuff that's already there in preparation for, I forget what company is going to come in and doing the paving and stuff. So now this is the second week I've been there, and it's really very, very rough. And Roger, I don't know his last name, the old guy.
He's the manager.
Well, there's Paul, there's Roger, and there's Jet. Anyway, Roger told me he'd taken a tumble because the ground is so uneven, and he was cautioning everybody who came up to the dumpster, be really careful, be really careful, be really careful. And I don't know.
Okay, can we leave that with Brennan?
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
I'm not sure what I do with that, but
Well,
you're concerned about the current condition of the pavement?
paving.
It's been 2 weeks that it's really rough.
Okay.
It'll be done next week.
Chris wants to say something.
I mean, I can speak to it. I mean, we're out there actively removing the pavement, and yes, it's the fact you're seeing so much undulation out there is because the pavement out there was, in some cases, barely an inch. In some cases, it was 6 inches. So it was a mishmash. So we've had to go through and remove the debris, remove the old pavement, which is not an easy job. The weather obviously hasn't been cooperating either this year, but we've managed to fit it in. The contractor is actually coming out here on the 14th, which is very soon, and they're going to be starting to do all the final grading. And the transfer station is closed on Wednesday the 16th, which has been posted to the website and out. And then we're going to pave on the 17th and 18th. So, I understand it's a little difficult out there, but we should be all wrapped up here in another week or so.
Thank you very much, Chris. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
And thanks very much for all the work on Hemlock.
Yep.
Anything else?
No, I will just add that I'd like to commend Chris and all of his hard work as he's battled through this recent weather events, keeping roads open and making emergency repairs, and I think just doing a very thorough and thoughtful job in that. So thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
We echo that. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thought we were going to need an arc the other night. All right. Next, I think we are up to Municipal Leaders letter about housing and homelessness. Brennan?
Yes. So you probably saw early afternoon, I did send out what is kind of a working draft of a letter that was created. Basically, we have a consulting firm that has been commissioned by the city of Lebanon, and they are trying to do a survey and then use the survey results to come up with an action plan to address homelessness in the Upper Valley region. And so it's not just Lebanon, it's other towns surrounding, and Norwich is one of those. So what I shared, and again, this was not in the packet because it is still a draft, and I don't think it'll change much from what you're seeing, but it's basically 5 paragraphs talking about kind of the housing challenges that we face currently in this area. And they're asking a number of towns to kind of sign on as the town leadership to support the initiative. This doesn't bind us really to anything at this point. It's kind of just a support letter that they're going to be, again, trying to gather information, try to understand the current situation, and then come up with some viable plans that we would then explore. So again, kind of informational only for the board, just to make sure everybody is comfortable with the message that's being sent out.
So essentially, they'll be asking for a signature, and Brennan would be signing off. So
Yeah, because we all know there's these problems. I mean, this is a nice, clear iteration of what they are, but I'm kind of wondering, is there another shoe that's going to drop, and it's going to be like, well, now we'll ask you to contribute to some,
That could be.
Start putting some money in and time from, you and other people. I mean, I'm not sure how much of a commitment might be.
I think signing this letter is not really committing to anything other than supporting the action study. And again, at some point when an action plan is developed, there might be a future request that, hey, as a town in the area, would you contribute in some way, whether that be service, whether that be location, whether that be funding? I don't know, what the ask would be, but that's somewhere down the road.
my take on it was that they understand we all as communities have different gifts. And so they don't even know what they're asking for at this point. Just have to wait.
Okay.
Anyway, as long as everybody's kind of okay that that's a message that Norwich will support, then I will sign it when we have a final draft here in the next week or so, I think.
I would agree. Anybody else? All okay?
I don't know whether, I don't see like Brennan I think this is sort of Brennan's town manager report to us, right? Because I had a question that I wanted to ask him whatever time that would be.
This is informational items.
Yeah.
It would be good to have town manager's report on the agenda for the purposes of board members in agenda setting are asking for updates on matters that should really just come in a casual town manager's report. And so like that's what we're seeing now is this like sort of Q&A which is actually not warned on our agenda. So I would say it's actually inappropriate to ask too many questions of Brennan when it's not,
I think
on the agenda.
And you said.
So we have a interim town manager's report on the second meeting of every month. So that's maybe more of a chance to ask me specific questions about different topics.
Well, you know what the question is because I gave you a heads up. I sent you a memo and I copied everybody on the board. And I didn't expect anybody to reply because we can't do that.
Not sure.
About where the RFP for the town manager search firm is being posted. That was my question.
Yeah, I think it was.
No, sorry, not that one. Not that one. The Tracy Hall improvement study.
So that is a little off topic, but I'm happy to tell you. So we put that up on the VLCT website. We posted that on the town website. I believe we posted that in the Valley News as a warning. And I sent that out to the architectural firm that had engaged with us initially to make them aware of it. And then I believe Jeff Grout, who is our IREC representative, had also asked if he could send that out to anyone else he could think of. And I said, absolutely. It's a public document at this point, and we're soliciting firms that would be interested.
Because it just seemed to me we might get a better response if we'd posted it on the AIA sites for New Hampshire and for Vermont. I mean, I can't tell you what firms to, I don't know. But for the town manager search thing, we're saying, here's some firms we've identified that we might be interested in. And I think you get a better response if somebody actually gets a thing instead of just kind of be like, if you're roaming around through a website, you'll find it. That's all.
Okay. So I think that's all for those.
Yep, that's what's due.
Okay, good. So now we are on to the action items, which are going to require motions. And the first thing is the applicants for open positions on the Development Review Board and the Recreation Council and the Finance Committee. So I was a little unclear and I asked some questions. So my understanding is that we have one vacant member seat on the DRB, and we have two alternate seats. And at the moment, we've got two people applying for the member seat. And one of those people is currently an alternate. And so if that alternate was appointed to the member seat, we would then appoint another alternate. I think that is correct. Okay, so if everybody is good with that, I think the first person, if I can get my thing, is it Alec? Is that the first one? Yeah. Alec, would you like to come up to the table and tell us about yourself and your interest in the Development Review Board?
Sure.
You've already sent us some information, but if there's anything else that you'd like to ask or answer a question or tell us.
Sure. My name is Alec Ornstein. I moved to Norwich 2 years ago, so I'm pretty new to the town. My wife and I moved here with our two young kids. We live up on near Union Village. And I'm a practicing lawyer, have been for 12 years now. And my interest in the Development Review Board is that I am looking for a way to get involved in the town and involved with the community and do some type of service for the community and be involved with this town that I hope to spend a very long time living in. And I feel like my background as a lawyer is just sort of a good fit for that type of role. I mean, reading statutes and regulations, applying them, analyzing them, writing decisions seems like a natural fit, stuff I've done for the last 12 years. I also think that it's important for these types of positions to be to have newer people on them. I know just from conversations with friends and neighbors that it's useful to have people that have a different perspective that haven't been here for a long time. So I'm hoping to bring that if I were able to serve.
Thank you. Well, we're always interested in bringing in more people because there's a lot of work to do and there's a lot of committees. So, and they're not all filled. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Shall we hear from, there's two people who are looking for that seat. Shall we hear from Mr. Rotman?
Jeff.
I think Jack
Oh,
Cannon.
Jack Cannon. Sorry. This is very complicated.
Okay.
I apologize. Jack Cannon, you're online. Would you like to
Yes.
speak to your application? Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
All right. I currently serve as the alternate to the DRB. I'm a retired lawyer, have been in town since 1977. I agree with Alec that we do need new points of view. I think I actually, never having served on the DRB, but having practiced real estate in town, I think I would bring that to the board. I believe I've contributed as an alternate member. In the event that Alec's interest is as a full-time member only and not also possibly for appointment to the alternate position, I want new people involved as well. And while I would love to serve as the full-time member on the DRB, if it's the feeling of the select board and Alec that only as a full-time member would he be interested, I would be happy to continue to serve as an alternate if he only wishes to serve in full-time membership. But if you wish to appoint me as a full-time member and Alec as an alternate as a way to get involved, I would respect that as well.
Thank you very much. Alec, do you have interest in the alternate position?
Could I ask what's involved with an alternate, or what the difference would be?
Marty, would you like to answer?
Well, this is Jack Cannon working off my wife's iPad. Basically, you do everything a full-time member does, but you don't always get to vote if a full board is there.
Backup.
Ginger Rogers.
Just like backup.
I mean, I would prefer to be a full-time member, but I wouldn't say that my interest is solely as that I'm not involved.
Thank you. Okay, so shall we start with the member position and then move on? Oh, Mary?
I move to appoint Alec Bernstein as a member of the Developmental Review Board, and I don't know the term, many years.
Well, that was not answered. I don't know.
Without the years.
So
expire in April 2026.
April 2026.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Was that Arlene's position or Richard Stucker's position? Do we know?
Could have been Richard, yeah.
Richard?
He's moved on.
Okay, shall I say this again?
Yeah.
Okay, did you say April 26, 2024, Rob?
2026.
2026, okay.
2026.
Right.
According to
I move to appoint Alec Ornstein as a member of the Development Review Board for a term to expire on April 26, 2026.
I'll second that with thanks to Mr. Camden's graciousness.
I'll call the question. Priscilla?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Marcia, no, just because I think Jack should have the opportunity to be a full member, but I'm very grateful for you coming forward. All right, so the vote passes, and that would be 4-1.
So can I make a motion for Mr. Camden now? Is that appropriate?
You certainly may. Well, now
maybe-
wait just a minute. He has that job.
He stays as the alternate.
But right, so now there isn't a position open. Is that true?
Well, there's a second alternate.
But is that filled? That's what's not clear to me.
I believe there is a second alternate that is open.
Yeah,
Okay,
Mr. Rockman.
April 2026.
April 2026. Well, they're consistent. So Mr. Rutt, would you like to come to the table? Sure. Please feel free to.
Okay, I can tell you a little bit about myself. I live at 95 Douglas Road, and we built the house in 1989. And initially we lived here part-time and then eventually full-time. And I retired a few years ago from a rather large retail business, and I'm used to working with groups of people and working with committees and trying to come to a solution that keeps everybody pretty happy. I'd like to collaborate. My background is Dartmouth and Tuck, and I've been involved in some national organizations, trade association, Better Business Bureaus. And I was involved in Norwich at the library. I was president of the library board for a while, and I loved it. It was good. And I felt good giving something back to the community. And then I worked in the Norwich Long Range Planning Committee, which I enjoyed. I'm not sure that our results of our committee's work were accepted. They should have been, I think, but I felt it was good, and I felt we did make a contribution. And now that I have a lot of time in my hands, I'd like to do something useful. And I'm very familiar with the DRB. My wife was on it for 15 years, and I heard a lot about the DRB. It sounds intriguing. I like the people that are on it, and I think I can make a difference. So I've applied as an alternate.
You'll bring a unique perspective, unlike your good spouse.
Any questions?
That was the question.
Oh.
Anyone else? No? Okay.
I have a question about the motion. So if there are two spots, could we, there's one spot.
Because Mr. Hannon already has it.
Oh,
Jack has it
okay.
already.
All right, I get it.
Yeah, that's why I was confused earlier too.
That's fine. I get it.
And Jack, when does yours expire?
I don't know.
Maybe Rob knows.
We figure that out tomorrow. That works.
Okay.
Update the board.
I think he was appointed in March for a 3-year term.
That's right, because we had that really long meeting, right?
They're all really long.
Right. Well, I remember appointing him because I feel like we know his work. It would be an acceptable appointment without his presence.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to appoint Barry Rotman as the alternate to the Development Review Board for a term expiring April of 2026.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Priscilla. I'll call the question. Priscilla?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, so that's unanimous.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All of you to the board. And Alex, I'll just tell you that there's no prohibition about looking for other opportunities to volunteer for it as well.
Thank you.
Don't load them up too much.
No. No.
I would just also say thank you to Grun for
Camden.
for his graciousness. That was a nice welcome to both politics.
Exceedingly. Thanks. Thanks to all of you. All right, that brings us to Lily Trayman, Town Clerk, and Oh, sorry.
Nominations.
Sorry, I apologize to all. We're at, I think, let's do the Recreation Council, or I had to stick in the Finance Committee, which is first. Who's coming up first?
You mean chronologically or on the motion sheet?
No, I'm looking, Finance Committee comes up next in the packet, so that's why I put it on the motion sheet. So is Nicholas Wood here? No, Nicholas
Yes,
Wood.
I'm here on.
Hi there. I can see you now.
I'm gonna put in my headphones as.
I'm not sure. You all right? Okay, you can hear us?
Yes.
Okay, good. So we have your application, and just, is there anything else that you want to offer in support of your application?
Not much. I would just say that my wife and I moved to Norwich 3 years ago, up on Shiloh Lane towards Union Village. But we're not new to the Upper Valley. We lived in Lyme and Fairleigh for the last 10 or 11 years, where I worked at the Aloha Foundation, ran the Holbury Outdoor Center. And since departing there a year and a half ago, I've been earning my MBA down in Boston at Babson College. So I know Route 93 very well at this point. And yeah, we have a 2.5-year-old and one on the way, and want to call Norwich home for a long time, and just looking for ways to contribute to the community.
Thank you. We're always glad, as you probably heard, to have people do that. It's very important. All right. Does anyone have questions? Priscilla?
I wasn't aware we had functioning finance committee.
Well, I asked that question today, and what I learned was that we actually have supposedly room for 7 members, and that Cheryl Lindbergh, who's our town treasurer, serves ex officio. Linda Cook was on the committee. She didn't resign, but her term ended June 30th, 2023. I'm not sure when the committee has met, and I'm not sure if they do anything to inform us.
We also appointed Nathan Margolis.
Who's we?
The select board, or the select board, probably a year and a half ago. Nathan Margolis has been appointed to the finance committee.
It doesn't, I mean, there's still not a quorum, so there's no meeting, no public body.
But if Linda were to reapply and this Nicholas Wood is appointed, we would have a total of 4 with the ex officio member, 4 out of 7. And the ex officio member, is that a voting member? I think she has voted.
I think there was a very strong.
I think I'm not sure she's ex officio. It says she's welcome to join if she so chooses.
Well, that's what I got from Miranda.
I think there's a very long charge. Like John Langus had done a lot of work on the charge for the finance committee. Look it up.
My proposal here is that we proceed straight ahead. There's no harm, no foul if we appoint, and then we can, what I've been promising to get my hands around this committees and boards and put up a big poster so that we understand it. And we can then perhaps beat the bushes and look at our procedures and charges and see what we can do about filling the rest of those positions. So, do we have a motion with regard to the application before us?
Do we have a term for this motion?
The term would be 3 years.
Okay. I move to appoint Nicholas Wood to the Finance Committee for a term of 3 years.
I will second that.
Seconded by Pam. I'll go all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much, Nathan and Nicholas. I'm looking at my notes about Nathan. Nick, I'm not sure what to tell you in terms of convening this committee, but I am going to tell you that we're going to be doing some research, because I think the Finance Committee is an important function that can assist the Select Board. And so we need to see what we can do about getting it sort of jump-started. Okay? So thank you very much. And for the moment, if you have questions, you should be in touch, I think, with our Interim Town Manager, Brennan Duffy. Okay? Thank you. All right. Yes.
If I could just comment. I love the idea of a big chart up there, which would be a great visual and everybody could see. Look what we have for committees and look where we have opportunities. I think that's
To a board near you soon.
fabulous idea.
Thank you. All right. Next. Next, we are moving to the Recreation Council. Is Stephen Hepburn here? Are you online, Stephen? I don't see any Hepburns. Stephen Hepburn, last call. You see anybody? It's been my personal preference not to make appointments if people don't have the interest to come to the meetings. So we could table this and we could proceed.
I would vote to table that.
Yeah.
Take it up next time.
So
I'm happy to vote on it.
okay. So we
Or
have,
I'm happy to appoint him as one thing.
right. So Priscilla, Pam, and I are leaning towards tabling it.
It's a hard and fast. I know we do prefer what we have, not always.
No, we have not always.
And this is it's a rec council. It sounds like someone who's, a member of the community is interested in soccer, wants to work with kids. So is this still the time to table, or we just want to meet them?
Well, maybe this person would like to come to us next time we meet, because we have in the past had people who couldn't be here in person, but they had someone to say, so-and-so can't be here, but I'm here to tell you how much this person wants to.
Well, that's true. We could say, we really want to meet you.
I would like to.
Right?
Probably not time sensitive.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with inviting him again.
So perhaps we could send him a message and just say this is going to be on the 8:23 agenda if he would like to join us.
That we'd like to meet him.
Right.
So we can communicate.
Absolutely. Actually, when I have kids running around, I like to know who was going to be working with them. Okay. Number 5, we are at note 4. Note 5. Yep. We're now at the town clerk proposed digitized records contract. Lily, would you like to join us at the great round table? I'll just say further to our town clerk, Lily Tramon's proposal to contract Cots Record Hub for the online provision of Norwich records, for which the town clerk's office is custodian. I asked council for guidance, and based on that guidance, created the memo which is enclosed in the packet this week. At the end of the memo, I posed some questions. Some of those questions appeared to be answered by the additional information provided to the select board this morning by Lily, which information will be in the next select board packet for public reference. In the meantime, I would first offer that the idea seems reasonable and as an additional method of access for users of our library of records. The questions are about finalizing who signed the contract, who pays the annual town contract fee, where's the revenue to accrue, who would like to pick up the conversation. Lily, do you want to start?
Yes, does anybody need an extra copy of the memorandum I sent out today?
Thank you.
So I guess I'm happy to answer any of your questions. Historically, Bonnie has signed all of these contracts, apart from the first one in 2012 when we first contracted with COT Systems, and that was Neil Fulton as town manager signing that. We are contracted with COTS for $290 a month, and that gets us online hosting of all of our images. This contract that I'm asking to be allowed to sign would not add any additional money to that. They're basically flipping a switch and putting all the images they already store in their cloud online and accessible to researchers who have a subscription or who pay a convenience fee to access the images. This is not a program that you or the average Joe on the street would know exists or know how to use. This is a program that title researchers turn to. I can tell you on Monday, I had a lawyer from White River email me and say, can I get a copy of the deed? I said, yeah, it's $1. You can come up and pick it up. And she said, I have to drive to Norwich for $1. I said, yep. So this is the sort of person who would use that service.
So, Lily, what have we been getting for our $290 a month?
So we get access to many things. We get the ability to upload all of our land records and other recorded documents into the COT hub, their cloud. We get access to that on 2 terminals in the clerk's office. And
So far, we have been able to see other people's records.
oh, no, we can only see our records.
Okay, we can only see our records, which we can also see by looking in the vault.
Yes.
Okay.
You can only see records online back to 1983 because we haven't digitized ones prior to that.
Okay. And we've been paying $290 a month since 2012.
Well, it started out at $225 and it's gone up since then. This is
cost effective?
I would say so, yes. And this is not really an optional thing. There are 4 companies that provide this service. Most of the town clerks in Vermont use COTS. It's really non-negotiable and we have to have that.
Yeah. So at the top, you say there's no cost to the town for this service, but in fact, we've been paying $290.
There's no cost to host, to make the online images available through their service.
And so then, knowing that we only have some of our images available, when you sign up for this service, are you then disappointed when you can't get the record that you need that happens to go back?
So this is also the separation between a title researcher and Joe Schmo, who wants to find out the history of his parcel back to 1772. All right, so title researchers only care about the last 20 years. They're more than happy to see what we have in our digital files.
Some lawyers do go back a little farther.
They're welcome to, but 40 years is probably it.
And they come here.
And then they just have to come here. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Roger.
So just to highlight, I think the big takeaway that I got, we're one of 4 towns, like how many towns who don't have the images?
So 132 responded to the VMCTA survey that this came from, and there are 4 towns that don't have their images online.
Yeah.
So we're in the minority with Clarendon, Dorset, and Manchester.
Manchester was surprising.
It was, and I can contact their clerk and find out why, but I think the big takeaway is we're trying to reinvent the wheel when it's already been invented and used in every town.
So I'm just on a roll here. Is that okay? So, the clerk's budget line. I'm just wondering, these fees, you're saying that we don't need the fees to go to the restoration.
These are not statutorily obligated to go into the restoration fund. They are treated as deed copies. They go into the document copying fund, which is in the general fund. So it's not clerk specific. It's revenue for you. Anyway.
That's by practice, but we could decide to put it into the restoration fund if we wanted to, and that would reduce the amount that we had to budget for the restoration.
That's yes.
Okay. So that's one thing I wanted to point out to the.
That's also not something you need to decide on tonight. Have that as a discussion at a later meeting.
Right. But here we are, so it's a handy time to do it. And how much, it sounds like from what you're saying, this $290 has already been budgeted. So we don't have to do anything in terms of looking forward.
The $290 is not on the table to be discussed. That's part of the clerk's budget. It was budgeted for this year. It will be budgeted for again next year.
So I think that's why are we talking about this? Are we talking about this because it is the town manager's prerogative to encumber contracts with the town, and in an interim town manager situation, the board is authorizing him to do so? Because that's the only basis I would see for why we're talking about it. Other than that, it's just fascinating and good information.
Well, Roger, you can come by whenever you want. I'm happy to give you the tour.
I had a lot of questions which I sent to council, which they thought were actually reasonable questions. And so I wanted to make sure, because right now the town manager isn't supposed to sign contracts under the interim town manager contract unless we've authorized it.
Yes.
And I didn't know if the town clerk would be statutorily authorized to bind the town for things. And so it looks like we've had a mixture in the past. And since this is going to produce revenue, albeit potentially small amounts of revenue, we're not really made of money. It would be good to sort of think about where things are flowing. And I think it's always good to think about who's signing on behalf of the town.
I think that's fine, but so is the board authorizing the clerk to sign a contract?
That's what the board is being asked this evening.
And that was the outcome of your advice from counsel.
Yes, basically, did you read the memo?
I'm just really, I did, but then,
It's not clear
but
about the
then,
detail.
but then it seems that, but then Lily had a response to, I assume, clarify the history, and she understands.
I think the explanation really is that without express delegated authority from ready?
Yeah.
Without expressly delegated authority from the board, an elected municipal clerk generally does not have statutory authority to contract in a manner that binds the town, or for matters that are within the scope of authority for the voters to decide. However, it gets a little gray when it's something that's within the scope of work of the town clerk. Now, it's arguable if it's within the scope of the town clerk because we are not required by law to make these things available digitally, but it is the way of the future and other people are doing it. And to the extent that it's not going to bring any harm or foul to the town, then fine. But I do think it's a question for the board, how you want to proceed. Is this something that you just say the town clerk should sign it or the board should sign it? And what should happen to the money? Should the money go back into the coffer for the town clerk? Should it go into the restoration fund or the general fund? And council said that's up to the board.
So,
Roger? Oh,
I don't want to
finish? Well, do you want to finish?
Well, I guess I would just say for this particular matter of like executing a contract, I think it's fine for the board to encumber the town with the contract. But then my next question is like let's keep this going. Like that's why, like I always thought that's why we had the town manager sign Lister's contract as well, right? Like I'm sure we can get a whole advice on like the role of that elected office vis-a-vis like other departments and other public bodies.
Or we have inconsistencies and
yes. So I think so I guess so I'm teasing this out because I just want to it seems like the conversation that we're having today is that the clerk will execute a contract with the board's approval, and that's could or
the town manager could.
So then my answer is, to the extent that it matters, is I think it's perfectly appropriate. The town manager collaborates very meaningfully with the clerk. She brings the contract, gets the work, brings it to the town manager to sign, and we go on living our wonderful lives. But I think we're only seeing it in this case because of our interim role. So to Brennan and Lily, next time Lily has a contract for doing the work that she does, I don't need to see it.
Well, I think,
you know what I mean?
Yes, but I think it brings up
learn something.
Stuff's developing all the time. And so, you always have to remember records are things that people have custody of and they belong to the town.
I understand. I worked in a museum. Yes, I get it.
Well, some people don't,
go ahead.
Right? And so to that extent, I think we need to always remember that they belong to the people. And we're sort of trying to make sure that the people's interests are being taken care of. Not that the clerk wouldn't do that, but, and then as you rightly pointed out, it bleeds over into other areas. And so it's always good in my estimation to have consistency. So I think, there is some consistency if everybody knows what's going on and the town manager signs contracts.
Yep.
And then when we have revenue coming in, I think to the extent that the people in this town are paying a lot of taxes, if there is extra revenue that should be reimbursed to people, because we're paying, we're pulling from people to do the restoration fund or the general fund. I think we should be thoughtful about how these things are actually flowing.
Yeah. Okay. So great. So we're authorized. Okay. So now I understand that the agenda item is to potentially authorize Brennan as the interim town manager to sign his contract, because that would mean that the board is saying the town manager should sign contracts that encumber the town. And then we've done some research to understand the clerk and their role in contracts, and we may very well understand the role of their elected offices with contracts. Okay, this is great. I feel fine.
Mary?
On the motion, it says I move to approve, and that's consistent, I think, with what we're doing on the interim time period that we approve and then Brennan signs. I think that's in order. I notice there's no term in here, a period of blank.
And I wanted to bring that up because when you look at the actual contract, I think it's this one, it's got really strange language. Did you notice that, Lily?
It's also basically an addendum to a 37-page contract that we've maintained since 2012. So we re-up it every. I have a response to Roger if I'm permitted to.
I'm just trying to understand.
I'm hoping to provide you clarity and shine a light here. So I told you Neil Fulton signed the contract in 2012, and I went back to that point in select board minutes, and I thought it was there. It was a discussion. And then Bonnie re-upped the contract in 2016, 2019, and 2022, and there was no discussion in select board minutes about it. So Bonnie signed for that without any knowledge on the part of the select board. So I'd argue that in this case, the duty to sign the contract with COTS is mine because I'm extending services that we already have with them, and I am the custodian of the town records.
And in fact, the bottom line wouldn't change.
The bottom line would not change at all.
Okay.
And I did find in the minutes, Bonnie came to you every time she had to make an expenditure from the restoration fund. So when she went to restore books on the order of $35,000 a year, generally, she would come before you and ask to be able to withdraw that money from the restoration fund.
And I'm not finding the contract right now, but it doesn't have a term. It says something really weird.
So the master agreement for products and services was signed on January 12th of 2022. And I can call and ask, but I assume that this contract will run alongside that one and expire in 2025.
Okay, so maybe you can work with Brennan on that to make sure, All right, Pam.
I was looking back at the budget and trying to decide where the $290 is in the budget. I noticed that we did have a payment to COT Systems in the warrant for this week, but there are no account numbers on the AP warrant as I had requested, so I don't know.
So it's billed to the software. Whatever I have is software expenses.
Okay. But I would ask again that account numbers be put on the AP warrant.
Sorry. Pam really wants that. She snuck it into this agenda item.
I believe it's in the town's financial master plan.
It
Do you
is.
have the account number?
Yes,
In
on the warrant articles. Yeah,
There are a lot of policies we don't follow that we need to get back to.
Okay, so sticking to this, let's get back to where we are. I would like to be sort of sure about what the term is. I know that there's a termination clause in there, but the term starts at the beginning. Oh, you've got it right there.
Do you want it?
Let me copy now. I'll hand it right back. Thank you. Let's say printed in color. This addendum will begin when it is signed by customer and be binding for the full period the service is active.
So that's until the contract expires in 2025. I assume, but I'm not a lawyer.
Those are vague, right?
I can ask them to clarify.
Yeah.
But again, I feel strongly that we're reinventing the wheel here, to not make a new contract just to stick it to the town of Norwich.
No.
Handed us the same contract they've given to the other 66 towns that use them.
That's what started my conversation. I'm like, why? Like, we're talking about this because it is believed that we need to authorize Brennan to sign it. And if that's why we're talking about it,
We're talking
then I'm
about
ready
it
to
for
make a
that
motion.
reason, and we're also talking about it for where you want the money to flow, and we're talking, just about having a better knowledge about what's going on in our town.
Yeah, I mean, I know what's going on. I pointed to the exact tension, and we didn't actually resolve it. So when do we want to?
This is a vehicle.
Yeah, if we want to resolve it.
We'll make a motion.
So sure. So I think the motion as written was I authorize the Interim Town Manager to.
Do you want to read the motion?
Well, why would we vote to approve? We're not the body that's approving it. We're authorizing someone else to approve it. right?
It's your motion.
And since I'm the customer,
Yes, I know how you feel.
mhm,
I move to authorize the interim town manager to execute the contract with Cox Record Hub Services for a period of
2 years, isn't
2
it?
years,
until 2025,
for a period until 2020,
until the mass.
expiring in 2025. That's it. Why do we need to do this?
What are you going to do with?
I think Lily's right. We should talk about funding separately. You want to know how the record contract will be funded?
Do you want to end the motion? Where do you want to end it, Roger?
That's where I want to end it.
Okay, so that's the first piece. Who approves the contract? And then Ralph get that.
Well, let me just make sure. I move to approve
Authorize.
Roger moves to approve the proposed contract with Cox Record Hub Services for a period of 2 years. That wasn't a date.
That wasn't my motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said that.
It's okay.
Authorize the interim town manager.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
To what?
To execute, I believe I said.
You did.
Okay.
To the proposed contract with COTS Record Hub Services for a period expiring 2025.
Yep.
Not a month in 2025?
Expiring 2025.
Not a particular month.
They'll figure it out.
Okay.
All right. So Roger has made that motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mary. Do I need to call the motion?
I'm not quite clear what the motion was. I move to approve the interim town manager to sign.
Yeah, I said I moved to authorize because the discussion that I was having, if
Just
I may
what's
just
the verb? Sign, authorize what?
I moved to authorize the town manager to execute. That's what I said. Execute sounds intense. It could be to sign. But I said execute.
The proposed contract with COTS Record Hub Services for a period expiring 2025. Period.
He also doesn't have to sign it if he wants to. I don't quite do it. He's executing it. But anyway.
So Roger has moved that. Mary has seconded it. I'll call the question. Priscilla?
I guess so.
Is that a yes?
Yeah.
Pam?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Marcia? Yes. Okay. Now.
I'm sorry, was that a yes?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
So I would like to just remind people that there will be money coming in and we are going to be doing budgeting. So we can postpone that discussion to the budgeting section if we want to, where we look at the whole picture. Or we could make a decision right now and say, we're paying for restoration and we're budgeting for that. So that could go back and replenish that a little bit. Up to you. Or we can, so wait or do something else. But
I think we need to wait because I would like to know, what moving the general funds that remain accessible to staff, moving that to a reserve fund may make it more cumbersome, particularly since, these are practices about someone's everyday work.
okay.
So which is to say, I think that requires a further conversation. I don't know enough to. I don't know enough to take action on that tonight, I guess is my point. I would like to hear from everyone.
Okay. Does everybody else agree with that?
I do.
There's one. Pam does. Priscilla? Okay. So we will make a note to bring this up during budgeting. You're electronic. Yes.
Thank you for doing that because I have no idea how much will come in via this electronic thing. So I can't even predict it right now and couldn't tell you where it should go.
We'll have a full and fruity conversation with budgets.
Excellent.
Good. Thanks, Lily.
Thank you.
All right. The next thing on the agenda is the select board procedure for Hennessey and future solar array projects. So further to two recent solar project proposals for Norwich, I drafted a memo for the board and asked council to review it. It's enclosed. Assuming you've all read it, I'll jump to the heart of the question, which is based on our recent experience, I proposed a motion for the board's consideration. Approval would simply mean that we would direct the town manager to work with legal counsel in every case where a solar plant project is proposed for Norwich, so that we make the appropriate filing, which is in fact the letter, on behalf of the town to have specific notice of all changes provided to this board. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Priscilla.
That's not what I'm looking at in front of me, but I had some thoughts after I read this stuff. And I just wonder if the select board is really getting into micromanagement in a way we should not. And I wonder what the role of the planning commission should be. And it seems from the things I read that the onus is on us, the town, whether it's the board, select board, or the planning commission, to make sure that these solar companies are behaving as they ought to. And that kind of annoys me because they ought to be behaving properly. And we're not at all sure whether they did or not in the Upper Loveland thing. And I kind of mind that we're the ones have to keep them in line instead of them behaving. But I also, I just like, I don't know, what should the proper role of the planning commission be vis-a-vis this? Because we're killing ourselves trying to get into all the details of everything.
Well, I think you're overestimating what we can do. This is the PUC process.
Yeah.
Part of the thing that I talk about in here is that the PUC process doesn't do some of the things that I think we sort of, when we learned about it, expected that they would do.
Yeah.
And so knowing that, quite simply, if you're fitting in somebody else's process and you've got two choices, you can either say, I will look at what they offer me for participation and thereby protect the interests of our town and people, or I'll just let it unfold. But you're going to have a pipeline of things happening, which you saw, or we saw after the fact, with the Upper Loveland, and which we might see with this other one. I don't pretend to understand the fine variances and distinctions of all these different projects, but there's a process at which point, if there's a preferred siting required, it's going to go to the planning commission, and then they're going to recommend something to us, and then we're going to have to say yay or nay. And after that, as you can see with Upper Loveland, you know, there's factual misunderstanding about what happened thereafter. And so a letter is a very simple thing, and just saying, advise the board directly. So something happens, a letter comes to the select board, it comes here, and everybody says, oh, okay, that's what we understood what was going to happen. Or, oh, no, that's not what we understood was going to happen. And now, council, how do we do something to get the PUC's attention? So it's not saying we're going to do anything. It is saying we're voting to have information. And I don't see how having information is ever going to be a bad thing.
What is the action on this agenda item, Marcia?
The action would be to direct the interim town manager through legal counsel to exercise the municipality's right to intervene in PUC proceedings involving solar siting in Norwich, and with the consent of the select board, to request a hearing and or take other steps to protect and defend the town's interests. So that translates to, we're going to tell the town manager by voting, if we voted for this, when we get that advance notice that's required by PUC rules that there's a project in the pipeline, Brennan picks up the phone or emails our counsel and says, we just got notice of this. He says, okay, and he sends a letter to the PUC. The select board wants to know what's going on as this evolves.
Does that come a little later in the process, like after the, because we reached a point with the Loveland where we had given the input that we were allowed to take without being an actual, I think, party to the proceeding. So there's a certain point where you apply to be a party. Isn't that true?
Yeah, well, no, you can do it at any time.
Or you can do it at any time.
Anytime, but it can be, as we saw, late in the game. And so,
well, there was no, I mean, as you just said, you know, you can either try to stay informed regularly, or you can, there's a point where, you know, it can kind of peel off and be really a public utility commission process where, you know, because you haven't said you want to keep track of it, they say, okay, we'll leave you alone. So we kind of did that. There was a point where we could have, you know, filed the party, but we did not. But this would say that we just automatically get in, right?
right, yeah.
Which I don't have a problem with. I think it's good to have information because I don't feel like I had information during that whole process. I mean, up to the point where we were reviewing it, I felt like we had guidance that seemed to make sense. But then, you know, looking at it later, when I learned about all the changes that have been made, I did not feel, you know, it's completely changed my whole idea.
So unless there's any questions, I would say, yes, would you like to come up? You may.
I'm concerned a bit.
Nope, we need your name, even though we all know.
Robert here, Norwich resident. I'm concerned a little bit about what seems to be the stated desire to be able to interject at any point and potentially kill a project. And the problem with that is that each project has a timeline that it needs to fulfill in order to accomplish a task, to show the public good, all the different steps that are already in existence and required. But what it sounds like you're adding is a level that at any point the town could intervene for whatever reason the select board decided was appropriate and throw a monkey wrench into it, which significantly will increase the time frame before the completion of a project or scuttle it completely, perhaps for less than appropriate reasons. One of the discussions that I heard, one of the comments I heard was the public good, the town's good, and so on. And it can't be forgotten that one of the things that's of great importance to the town, all its residents, to the state, to the country, and to the world is dealing with the risk of climate problems. And the most significant thing that we can do right now is convert our electric generation from fuel oil, coal, and other sources to a sustainable solar or wind or hydro sources. That trying to make sure that there are more roadblocks to that process is ultimately bad for the town, bad for the state, bad for the country.
Well, that actually is erroneous in that we have that now. We have that power now. The problem is information. And so it came as news to this board how things had changed. And then
some members of this board.
Some members of this board. And so we could do anything we wanted to in terms of sending a letter at any stage, now or in the past. We're trying to follow the rule of law. We're trying to follow what the PUC has for procedures. All this is suggesting is that we ensure that this board knows exactly what's going on.
This particular method of making that guarantee is more intrusive and blocking of the process than just being responsible for keeping track of that and proactively at a point where you are concerned about it, interject the town.
It's allowed by statute 30 V.S.A. 248A41, and by PUC rule. And the PUC is certainly interested in making sure that we're doing all we can to move in the direction of saving the planet. So I think this is just due process. It allows people who have said something or haven't said something or don't understand fully what's going on to step in and say, wait a minute, we would like to say something, which does not mean it's going to stop any project, but it might actually mean it's a better project.
So it also could be, if I may continue the discussion, it also adds a chilling effect to the process.
I think you should take that up with the legislature because they've allowed for it.
So they allow for it, they don't require it.
They don't, but we have
They
that.
don't require it. So you're taking a step that is actively interjecting a roadblock, perhaps unnecessarily.
Well, that's exactly what we're trying to make sure doesn't happen by being very careful and getting full information.
So can we all have this conversation because
Yes.
you're kind of speaking as a group and doesn't represent.
No,
So
I know, but I'm
the-
trying to answer the questions
Okay.
about the law.
So as you understand it. So
As I got from council.
as you got from council, so your interpretation of council's, which is not this board's interpretation, I have an explanation from council. The town plans explains that a preferred site is a parcel of land in Norwich not subject to a scenic, cultural, and natural resource overlay, right? A preferred site project proposal receives a letter from the zoning administrator confirming its location as a preferred site, which is any land in Norwich not subject to a scenic, cultural, and natural resource overlay, right? That is the process.
No, Roger, that's the town plan.
That is the process that the visionary document of this town has confirmed. And to Priscilla's point, I think anything else, and also in some ways Rob's point, is looking to overstep and undercut the project. Like we don't need to micromanage more than that. It's like there's a document that explains what. If you would like to relay the advice of counsel, then they can come before the board and we can have a review attorney-client advice and we can make a decision as a group.
Well, let's just.
So what you could do is when you give when the zoning administrator issues a preferred site letter, we can write in that preferred site letter that we want to remain subject to an intervening status. That is legally permissible to do. You can write that in the letter. I think that the effect of that will be exactly as Rob describes. We will intervene subject to public opinion on a popular project by a small group of people. And that's bad policy.
Our last letter didn't follow what a preferred site letter was supposed to do, and that's irrelevant. All I'm putting before you is, Roger, all I'm putting before you is this is an allowed thing which does nothing negative to any project. It only gives information to the select board. And unless you want to keep the select board in the dark as plans change and people change, I'm not sure why we wouldn't want as much information as we could get. And so I'd like to just close this conversation. If there's no interest in this, then I'll make the motion and nobody can second it and it will move on. But we don't want to be here until 10 o'clock.
Well, we haven't heard from anyone else either.
Anyone?
Thank you for what you've been saying, because I probably shouldn't say this in public, but okay, all right. People do not always behave. People behave with their own self-interest in mind, and sometimes the company's self-interest does not coincide with the public's. And
let's
the public.
And I have not had good experience in the solar area. So I'm just one person and with very limited experience. It hasn't been very good. And I think there's a certain amount of regret on this board, certainly in me, for what happened with the Upper Loveland thing. Even though I wasn't on the board when the letter was written and all that, I just feel as though there was something unsavory and a little sneaky about that. Okay, I can't say that. I can't say that. Okay, I think we should have the information that we feel we did not get, which was when a plan changes. And it's one thing to say, oh, it wasn't very much of a change. And I guess part of the argument was, well, was it a change or not to go from 3 acres to 9 acres or 8 acres or whatever it was? If everybody had been at the same place at the same time, there would have been less he said, she said confusion.
Okay. Pam, do you have a comment?
No, I'm ready to vote for this motion.
Okay. So, Mary, do you have a comment?
No,
Okay.
I don't.
All right. So the motion, as I suggested it, was, and I can make it, or if somebody else wants to make it.
I'll make it for you.
Okay. Go ahead, Priscilla.
I move to direct the interim town manager through legal counsel to exercise the municipality's right to intervene in PUC proceedings involving solar siting in Norwich, and with the consent of the select board, to request a hearing and/or take other steps to protect and defend the town's interests.
I will second that.
Second by Pam. Call the question. Priscilla?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Roger?
Absolutely not.
Mary?
Yes.
Marcia, yes. 4-1. Thank you very much to everyone. And now we're on to the listers. Is Pam here? Pam, sorry. Cheryl. Not even on the podcast. Cheryl's online.
I'm here.
Cheryl, okay, that's great. So the listers had submitted information about 2 omissions in the grand list, which the board has the power to correct pursuant to 32 V.S.A. 42661. Cheryl, please take the rest of this for us.
Okay, it's pretty straightforward. I thought the memo was easy to read, maybe not for some, but we missed a couple of assessments that needed updating. So we need to correct that, and therefore we need the select board's permission to do that.
Okay. Does anyone
does anybody have any questions?
Priscilla has a question.
I just want to comment that I was very puzzled by the memo, because the difference between an assessment of 2.4 million and 4 was certainly not 16,659. And maybe I'm just stupid, but it had to be explained to me that the difference was the tax assessment. So the tax bill changed by that much.
No, it didn't. Priscilla, no, that's it.
More. Well, yes. I don't understand the memo.
Misunderstood.
Okay, so basically the assessments are divided by 100 to get to the grand list value to be taxed. So the difference between what was in the grand list and what should have been in the grand list is a difference that, when divided by 100, is the assessment. We don't do anything with taxes in the lister's office. It does impact the tax bill that's sent out, and therefore 2 tax bills will be revised and mailed tomorrow to these 2 property owners.
So was this a math error or an assessment error?
We did not update the grand list amounts for these 2 parcels to the current assessed values. They remained at last year's value. So they needed to be up.
16,000 should be 1,600,000. No, but I'm trying to do the math.
Yes, Priscilla. Yes.
The difference between one and the other is 1,665,900.
Okay.
But then when you divide that by 100.
Yes, but they're not divided by 100 in the first part, and then they are in the second one. Yes. Now it's clear. Thank you.
My apologies.
I'd like to make.
Okay.
I'd like to move to approve the lister's office correction of omissions from the grand list as to parcel ID 70004.100. I'm sorry, 0.000. Owner Vermont Transco LLC, and parcel ID 70-001.000. Owner Green Mountain Power pursuant to 32 V.S.A. Section 4261.
I'll second it.
And by Priscilla.
Clear.
About sort of the big picture here. and what we all understand is happening. So I attempted to help that discussion by putting out a memo that laid out the different votes, and then I went back. The votes happened on July 12th and June 28th, and I have them here if anybody wants to know. So I guess we need to sort of understand where everybody thinks we're headed with Tracy Hall, and I guess in particular the heating. So Priscilla and Pam have been working diligently to try and identify some other alternatives to a fuel boiler. I shouldn't say fuel, a oil burner. Right. Okay. Mary, do you want to start? What do you think?
Well, I just think we have a short-term problem and a long-term problem, and they're sort of crossing in some ways. And I'm concerned for the town clerk. Our plan is to have everybody move out, but she's got to have access to the vault. So I just think there's a huge disconnect here. And are we just gambling that the oil burners that we have, are we just gambling that they're going to hold together? Or is there some reasonable way, electric space heaters to keep the town clerk warm and everyone else can move out? I just think it's kind of the short-term part, I think is worrisome. That part worries me. And then on our long-term, I do appreciate all the work that you've done to, find out about pellet stoves, wood fire, wood chip operations and things like that, and to just understand more about Tracy Hall. I think that's really good. And also to get it out there that I think that, it shows the public that you're kind of looking and really thinking about our space and what it could be. So I appreciate that effort, but then that also sort of, can't quite line up with what we might learn from an architect. We have our idea of the architect who might be able to answer questions like, you notice that if in one of the conversations, if you add insulation, maybe your roof gets colder. Would the snow load be more? Would the roof collapse? Things like that perhaps an architect or another expert might be able to answer.
We could.
And also because you've been working with vendors, each one is going to have their own idea of what's the best. The guy who sells oranges is going to sell they're the best. Or UC and Farm, one says apples, make pies out of them. So it's it's good information, but I'm just concerned about the short term and in some ways about the long term too. And then I have sort of individual comments about some of the reports, but I thought if we're going to delay this, I'd just put it in a memo so they were all in one little spot and they were in writing. I have some comments too, but they're just very particular, and I don't think they need to come out tonight.
I think it does beg the question, what did we want the architect to do? And if we move on something, then what is it that we're expecting the architect to tell us after we made one decision, which is pretty big, right? Like if we chose to go with pellets, that I don't know, but that means we have to do some retrofitting and I don't know how much that's going to cost, etc. But I'm not sure I'm worried that we're jumping the gun. And we also had tasked you with the impossible dream of finding another place for people to work, knowing that Lily and her records are stuck here.
Apart from the last 40 years.
Yeah, she's got 40 years that are warm and dry.
I have one request too. Yes. I would really like to have a definitive idea of whether or not this building is grandfathered as far as what actions can be taken, because I think we are getting a mixed message. We might be getting a mixed message. I'd like to know what the EEI said, okay, it's grandfathered. So if you change something about the method of heating, then it's also going to trigger all the code regulations up to date ones for ventilation. So I'd like to know, and it might be other besides ventilation too, I'd like to know which agencies, would be doing the permitting. Is the fire marshal's office, or what exactly is the permitting sort of climate, or, ecosystem for renovating this building.
And I thought that's what we would learn from an architect.
Okay, but if we, let's say that we were excited about the wood pellet system, and I was very impressed by the amount less of carbon that it emits. It's not carbon neutral, but it's looking way less, and so in some ways it moves us closer to our Article 36 idea, but not completely, because it does emit a little carbon. So I might get really excited about that. But what if we initiate that, but then suddenly, the permitting requirements are in our face? And also that to fix the ventilation in the EEI proposal did seem really expensive, even though it's just a bunch of dumb ducts, but I mean, it's the labor, you got to tear everything up. But it did seem, even if you had pellets, like the geothermal was something like 400,000 of it, the pellets would be 200,000. So you can cut significantly by doing that, but you wouldn't get rid of all the requirements to do the ventilation, which accounted for a lot of the rest of the very large price. So we might be stuck with a large bill for mundane kind of updates, like running wires and running ducts and things like that. So I don't know. It's a big puzzle. I just don't think we quite have a handle on it yet. And I'm concerned about town clerk over there.
And so to the extent that under statute, the town manager is responsible for town buildings, I'd like to hear what you'd like to say.
Okay. So I guess I agree with Mary's assessment that we kind of have a short-term critical decision, and then we have a longer-term, investment to think about. And I made my proposal a few meetings ago that I think, like the past town manager and like the living buildings report and like our IREC representative, everyone felt that the best short-term investment was to get a operational, modern, efficient boiler, oil burning boiler, and install that before the winter season. I understand the reasoning and the policy behind the select board not wanting to support that, but I continue to think that that is the best solution that would alleviate a risk of the boiler going out for an extended period of time and needing to relocate staff out of Tracy Hall to other working environments. And again, the issue of the clerk's office being kind of held here because of the records that are located here. And also, the issue of freezing pipes and major damage being done if Tracy Hall goes without heat for an extended period of time. I mean, that could be catastrophic. So that said, I don't know if there's any interest in reconsidering that tonight, but I would throw it out there as an idea. If there is not, I would add that we, as we know, we currently have 2 antiquated heating systems working on off oil. One of them is operational. I did, following the past direction from the board, reach out to try to get a repair made for the second boiler. So we have some redundancy. My guess is that people are out straight right now. I don't believe I've even heard back yet that we're on their list for service. But again, we're in August. I'm not worried about that yet. I think we will be have repairs and have 2 of those done. So again, the cost for the new boiler, if we were to move on that immediately, is probably roughly $35,000 to $40,000. So that's well established. So that's the amount of money we're talking about. I don't think we're going to find a alternative fuel source before the heating system occurs, or the heating season occurs. I've been directed to issue an RFP to find a professional consultant who will, I think, be able to guide us through all of these iterations of what will Tracy Hall be and what type of investment would be most practical and reasonable. And as part of that, the heating system will be thoroughly discussed. So I would, I guess, propose that we wait until we have that consultant commissioned to work with us. That this whole idea of deciding on a new heating system, if it's not going to be an oil boiler, we're going to go with the 2 current heating boilers, and then we make it a priority once we have somebody hired by the town to work quickly over the next month or 2 months, which would put us into probably November, to help us guide us in what we should be doing for the long term. And I think that might be more efficient than jumping around between different ideas that we don't all fully understand because we just don't have the professional expertise to understand them. So that would be my suggestion would be let's wait for the RFP responses. Let's see who we have. Hopefully we have a number of competent professionals. Let's hire one quickly. Let's get them engaged with the town, and let's try to move that process forward as quickly as we can. That will also parallel with what we are doing with our energy audit with the state that we have applied for. I have not heard that we've gotten a date of when we're going to be seeing somebody or that will begin, but we're very early in the queue there. So again, that might be coming online again at the end of the season here, or the end of the calendar year. So if both of those came together, that would give us a lot more information to work off of what we have tonight.
One more, just that I believe EEI did energy audits of the town buildings, just so that information is not overlooked.
Yep. This will be
that too. So
this will be an up to date. 2023. This is a third party assessment of our energy needs and our energy use.
What, 2017?
oh my gosh, what back was that?
It was 3 years ago.
Only 3?
The vote to overturn Article 8 was in August of 2020. So the audit was probably done in 2019.
Okay, so here we are. How do we want to proceed?
Do I get to talk?
You do, yes.
I've been waiting for that.
Okay, well, I may have said at the beginning of the meeting, or if I didn't, whatever. Pam and I have been trying to put together a report looking at all the things that we looked at, summarizing them, cost, timeline, and actually making a recommendation. And we didn't think it was fair to send it out at 4:00 this afternoon because, it's a fairly substantial thing, to think about. And that's not much time before the meeting. But I have the draft here. And if you don't mind, I'd like to share with you the essentials of what's in it.
I think what we decided was if we're going to get into the merits of this, we're going to do it at a separate meeting. That's what we were talking about rather than tonight.
Okay.
I think what I thought we were saying in the beginning of the meeting was we were going to decide what we had decided before because there seems to be some confusion. Pam.
Well, the first thing that we need to remember is that this has been known for over 3 years.
But
and nothing has been done. And now we're in an emergency situation. And Priscilla has talked to ARC Mechanical. They said the very earliest they could put in an oil for the end of the year. So unless we have a guarantee that the heating system that we have will absolutely keep this building warm until December 31st, I think we have to do something sooner than another month or two. I think we need to get something approved and moving. So
okay,
I think that kicking the can down the road has been done for 3 years. It's time to stop kicking the can.
So I guess what I'm going back to is we said we had 3 motions.
So can I want me to help? So yeah. I guess procedurally, I don't really know why we're discussing this. So I think under Robert's rules, to the extent that this board follows them and doesn't adopt them formally as part of our rules of procedure, you can have a motion to reconsider at your next meeting, right? The next meeting after we made those motions that Marcia was just going to read for us has passed. So I guess an argument could be made that Priscilla has provided new information and thus it's right for reopening, but it's not new information to me. And so I don't see the need to carry on with the discussion. Like the motion, like what Brennan just said, will let our RFPs come back, also reflects the motions that we made. So I think the information that has been, the work that you have done, as Mary said, can certainly be leveraged and certainly communicate to the public that you've done your own individual diligence. But like, I think this is what it is. Like, it can be passed on to a potential buyer, and it can communicate something to your constituents, but it's not something that we need to do anything. This board needs to do anything with.
If I can add, I mean, I think that we directed the interim town manager to investigate alternative space. That's neither here nor there, right? We moved to repair the existing oil burner, which Brennan is trying to do. And we voted to authorize the interim town manager to develop an RFP for professional services to create design options to meet our goals.
Right.
So I don't think that anybody, don't let me speak for anybody, but I don't think anybody wants to negate any of those three things. But there seems, did I misstate?
Well, of the, people who voted against the oil burner, I was the only one who wanted to do that. So I just, if you're asking who has a disagreement, what are you talking about?
You and I did.
So
right. Anyway, it doesn't.
The consensus of the board was that this is what we're going to do.
Right. Well, that's true.
Right.
So we've already. It's a rash decision.
So I guess my comment was just to sort of uphold both what Marcia is saying now and then also what Brennan just said, which is just like we've taken the appropriate actions. We need to wait on those actions. And there's no the interest of our time. We don't need to discuss further until
I guess the new question is, having made the decision that we were going to have Brennan try and repair this burner and move us out if there was a problem, do we now want to pivot and say, but in the interim, even though we've also put out an RFP, we want to make a decision, this board, about going to a different fuel source burner? That's the question. So if somebody wants to phrase, maybe the fastest way is to just phrase that as a motion, vote on it, and then we know where we're going, because I don't want anybody to be wasting their time.
But then on that basis, could we just sort of take it up again when, I don't know, our neighbors who are really passionate about green energy learn of the board's action and come to us with reasoned and thoughtful arguments when they come to the room? Are we going to let reconsider it again? Like, I think I raised an issue on process, right? There's no, when you make a decision that you need to, and it's the majority vote of the board, if there's not substantially new information that comes forward, and I'm saying that this report that we haven't seen is not new information, and there's no reason to take action, because otherwise you're becoming arbitrary and capricious. You're not governing, right? And so we can't do that.
I would argue that there is new information in our report.
Okay.
All right.
I haven't seen it.
So how about, I'm trying to move us forward here. So is it fair to say that we might vote whether or not we want to have a special meeting on Tracy Hall, or if we want to just wait for the RFP? Because Priscilla.
I would very much like us to have a special meeting next week. Pam and I will get the report out so the public can see it, so you can see it, so anybody who wants to come and discuss it can discuss it. As Brennan said, we have a long-term and a short-term problem, and the short-term problem is quite urgent. My concept, I hope, when we get the people responding to the RFP, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on this building, and we need to have, let's call it the architect, devise a plan after talking with all the stakeholders to find out what the needs are, the people who are using the building and what we anticipate, and say, okay, here's a prioritized plan. I don't expect the taxpayers to pay for the whole thing immediately. I think that's unfair. I think we have to be careful with taxpayers' money. But there's some things we should maybe do right away, and other things we can get to as we go along. There are gradations in how urgent something is. So I don't see that it's in conflict if we could come up with a system that would, we can't keep waiting for the energy audit, waiting for the RFP to be. Time is going on. I mean, we started this process actually the very end of May, and we're in mid-August. So I would really like to have a meeting next week to discuss this. And if it's the only issue, that's fine. And if we have a, tremendous crowd and they all want to talk, that's up to you to decide how much they can talk. But, I think we should have a full public airing of this, but I think we should not be sitting around because people are busy.
Let me just ask, can you restate, you think that we'll be able to fix that boiler and limp through the winter? I'm not
going to put me on the record with that.
I'm not going to ask you to tell me that it's going to work all winter. Do you think we can get it?
We made it through last winter in the same conditions. 1 year more age on the boilers, one that broke down, created a fire, and has to be repaired. I don't think that's impossible to repair it, and then we'll have the 2 old boilers that we had.
So let's just make it clear. You're not an expert in this, and you're not being held to that.
Thank you.
Yes. Everybody got that.
What we've done, just to be clear, we've had boilers break down. We've had people come out, they've repaired them for thousands of dollars, and we've got them running again. So that's what I would assume will happen. I don't think we'll have a month in January where we will have zero heat in Tracy Hall.
Okay.
But we could have days, it's possible that we could lose both of them for a period of time.
And do you have a plan if we have days?
Not a great one. I think the temporary space heaters that would allow, Lily and her office to function is probably reasonable. We could close up areas so it was efficient as possible. Most people are able to work from home to some extent, and we have the public safety building where we could move people. So, there are ways we can react if we are forced to react. I would prefer not to do that, as I stated, but there are solutions there.
Mr. Rogers first.
I guess I would like to make the broad point that, this report, which this board didn't commission or necessarily explicitly ask for, something you took on yourselves to do.
I take offense with that.
For your own education. There was no formal action for it. And I think even though we appreciate it, even though it may be interesting to see it expressed in your point of view, for us, it's always you always learn new things when someone presents information in a different way. I think it is really disrespectful to, at least to formalize and charge these, right? Article 36 Task Force, which was an ad hoc committee that produced a really important report for us. We also had a long-standing engagement of the Energy Committee. They made recommendations. They engaged all the systems. They asked the questions you had and answered them. There were public sessions at the Norwich Public Library. There was much public discussion. And so I would say the party has happened, and we just, maybe not all of us went to it. So I appreciate your work. We will always learn new things when there's work presented. But, you should consider that we've had many groups of people with lots of storied backgrounds in these areas do good work for our town, and we continue to not take action on their work. And I think that's really disappointing.
Okay, I know both of you want to respond. Mary was next.
I wanted to ask Brennan if there's a means of draining the pipes. If that's something that's ever been done, or if he's looked into that.
I consider that.
Okay.
Winterizing the building?
No, just that we did have an event, and poor Lily's there's space heaters. But if the building had vulnerable cold spots where the plumbing might burst, is there a plan? Could there be? I shouldn't say is there, because I think it's kind of complicated. But
the solution to that is to put antifreeze in the system so that the pipes don't freeze and burst.
But they would be in the drinking water systems?
No, it's only in the water that circulates through the radiators.
But what about all the water that goes to the bathrooms?
That would not be, it's a closed system that goes to the radiators. And you put antifreeze in the lines so that they don't freeze.
But what I'm asking about the plumbing that carries the potable water to the bathrooms and the kitchens, are they going to break?
I don't know.
Well, I'm just asking.
I see what you're saying.
If it's very, very cold, maybe they would not be affected. I don't know, but what if they are?
Most of the water is in the lower level.
Well, that's probably good, but
So how about each of you give a 3-minute summary, and then we'll just
Yeah, just do it.
what?
Yeah, I'm supporting what you're saying. Sorry.
And then we can decide about next week. Yeah.
I'm still in favor, even though it goes dreadfully against our energy goals, to get a new oil boiler in there, because it's far less money and it buys us time to think about the larger questions. And we've been advised by 4 different people that is a wise choice. It buys us time. It's a relatively small amount of money. It's relatively small changes to the building. So I'm just in that camp, and that's all I need to say.
Okay. So I don't remember who was first. Go ahead, Priscilla.
I'm sorry to say that I feel as though I'm talking to a wall, and that people do not want to even consider what I might say.
No, I'm not. So please tell us what you want to say.
Well, you don't seem to want me to summarize very briefly what's in the report. So I'm just going to ask, can we please have a meeting next week? And will you allow this information? I'm going to put the information, I'm going to put the information out there on the listserv if I can't get it out in a packet. I mean,
There's no reason why it can't come out of the packet.
well, I wouldn't think so, but I'm feeling a certain amount of hostility.
I don't think you should. I think everybody's frustrated because nobody wants to be in this situation. And for a variety of reasons, we are in this situation. And the problem is how we coordinate this. And that's all we're talking about. So I think if you want to give your summary, can you do it in 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, do it.
There are differences of opinion as to whether we have to update the ventilation system. Pam has talked to Rachel Moscolino from Efficiency Vermont. She says, no, we do not have, it's desirable. It is not a requirement for us to do that if we put in, say, a pellet boiler system. I would prefer not to put in another oil-fired boiler because it doesn't move ahead our notion that we're going to get rid of fossil fuels. In the same amount of time that we could do that, maybe less, we could put in a pellet boiler system. We have information on that stuff. We have a current estimate of what that would cost. You could, as I say, that would solve the problem, and it would reduce our fossil fuel usage enormously, because it would require a little propane burner backup. Every system requires some kind of backup. The EEI proposal would take, I'm not sure, it's kind of vague. It would require about 15 geothermal wells. I don't know where they would be put. It's estimated it would cost between $2.5 to $3 million. Obviously, it couldn't happen overnight. The one from Living Buildings, they admit, is experimental. It would probably take a couple of years. They don't know what it would cost, and they could use this as a campus to train people to do this kind of stuff. To me, it seems like, why don't we just put in a pellet boiler system for, I think, under $200,000? It's done. We then have time. The building's not going to, burst. Lily is comfortable. The records aren't at risk. And we still have time to find out all the other things we need to be doing to the building. And I don't think that would in any way be a problem, because we've got a heating system and we're cutting way back on fossil fuels. That's it.
Okay. Pam, do you want to add?
Yes, I would like to point out that Article 36 was an advisory article. The report from the Article 36 task force was an advisory report. I would also submit to you that the Finance Committee is an advisory committee that this select board has never listened to, and therefore all of the, most of the Finance Committee members resigned because they were sick of doing the work and having no one listen to them.
Can you stick to this?
So when it comes to advisory reports and advisory committees and advisory articles, we need to keep them in their proper lane, which is it's a nice to have. And it would be nice to eliminate fossil fuels across the entire town, but that's not going to happen overnight. So it's time for us to move in the direction that we can move, which is to substantially reduce our carbon footprint here at Tracy Hall. Maybe not totally, but certainly send us in the right direction by a substantial reduction.
So as I understand it, we'd have to have a propane backup even if we put this in. And that's fossil fuel burner. I'm not sure, but I think pellets are some sort of, because I think on wood or something.
80% from waste products.
Okay. So we'd have to have a backup system no matter what we do.
Every system involved requires a backup. The Living Buildings one suggested oil. Said put in the oil furnace because it would take a couple of years to do this, put in an oil furnace, and then it's your backup. The one from EEI says, oh, you can put in an electric boiler.
So,
Roger.
So what is the outcome that you want to see?
I would like to be a good steward of taxpayer dollars, and if I don't have to spend $2.5–3 million down the road, and I can spend $200,000 now and take care of the problem, I think that's a good deal.
We might actually decide that ultimately that is the right, but we might do it more. I might feel more comfortable about it if we had an architect telling us, yep, that's the way to go.
But do you have the time to wait for that?
I don't know what we have time for. All I know is that we are moving now and all we can do is now. We are moving now as expeditiously as we can. And so hopefully we will have some architect come and give us some advice and we can make some decisions. For the moment, I tend to agree that we need to just stick with what we've got, even though I don't like what we've got. And if it's dying, I can't say that I can oppose getting a new one because we're going to ultimately have to have a backup something, which we don't want to use.
But if you look at the carbon footprint of the various types of fuel oil is the worst on the list.
Mm-hmm.
Propane is better than fuel oil, and wood chips are better than propane, and pellets are the least. And then after that, you go to wind and solar.
Right.
But
and it's a dramatic difference. I mean, it's not just a little better to have pellets; it's a lot better.
It is a lot better.
So we have to make. If everybody, I think we've done what we can do with this. Jan wants to make a comment, and Lily wants to make a comment. I saw Jan first, so go ahead, Jan.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, Jan Losbra, Upper Pasture Road. Just to keep it simple, I think the new information that has come up here is the option of a pellet boiler, which is then a very large reduction in carbon footprint with the simplicity of a boiler rather than the geothermal thing is just simply not going to happen. $3 million, multiple years, it's been voted down. I think we have enough new information and a short-term fix that actually deals with both the carbon footprint and getting a workable boiler in there, possibly in this heating system. It seemed, when I read it recently, it seemed like a common sense, obvious, preferred way to go. So I would like to support that and to move that forward. Thank you.
You're supporting pellet stoves over a new oil burner.
Yes, and over further study and I don't mind architect going forward, but do not wait. Anything we say that is an RFP for a study equals many, many months. And if we can use the same heating system and drop a carbon reduced fuel in there, I would support that.
Thank you. Lily.
So according to what Brennan has told me, my vault has a wet fire suppression system, correct? Yeah, that's what I've been told as well, which means we're one sprinkler system trigger away from using all of our ARPA money to restore my documents.
Somebody told me that it was actually dry. Who was it?
No, we've corrected.
Oh.
Yeah. So Whatever you decide to do, and I agree, short and long-term problems, and my air conditioning has also failed, so please don't think this is going to stop with heating. I also can't air condition, and it landed a big puddle on my rug, so it didn't go quietly into that good night. It soaked everything around my desk. We need some sort of solution to a boiler not exploding or setting things on fire or triggering the sprinkler system. Alternatively, we need to look into if we can just turn off the sprinkler system in the vault, because a fire is very unlikely to start there. And there's an 8-hour fireproof door on it. So if we can just remove that added area of worry from me, I would appreciate it, but that can happen in a subsequent meeting.
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me that no matter what happens going forward, that might be a smart thing.
I would think so. And I feel like bagging them up with little baggies is probably not the way to go. So, thank you.
All right. I need some direction.
I'd like to make a motion to table the decision on the Tracy Hall heating system, Tracy Hall boiler, to Wednesday, April 16.
April?
Sorry, I'm getting tired. August 16 at 6:30 p.m.
I'll second that.
Priscilla seconds it. I think we had a lot of discussion, so I'll call the question. Priscilla? Yes. Pam?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Yes. Mary?
Yes.
Marcia? Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Unanimous.
Just to clarify, that was to take the decision, table the decision on and spell it out for me.
To table the discussion of the Tracy Hall boiler.
Discussion, not decision.
Right.
Okay.
To April, I'm sorry, August. I keep saying the wrong A month. August 16 at 6:30 p.m.
Okay.
Put it on my calendar.
Now we need to have an interim town manager review procedure discussion. So would someone like to make a motion to start that?
The executive session motion?
Yes.
I move to enter executive session under 1 V.S.A. 31383 to discuss the evaluation of a public officer or employee and to invite the interim town manager as appropriate.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second by Priscilla. All in favor? Unanimous. Do we have a second motion?
I think there is one.
Oh, I missed it. I moved to enter executive session under one.
That's what I just said.
Oh, yeah, we don't have a second one, right? Because it's 3. I'm sorry. Okay, so we're in executive session at 9 p.m.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right. May I have a motion, please?
I move to enter public session.
Thank you, Mary. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Pam. All in favor? Aye. So unanimous. Thank you. We're in public session at 9:29. Okay. Now, would you all like to have a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Please do. Thank you. So back here at 9:36.
The recording has This meeting is being recorded.
It's on.
It's on now.
It's on. Yep, 9:34. All right, 9:34. Let me get that down. So we are now at number 10, which is the Finance Department personnel contract issues. Could we please have a motion to move into executive session to discuss the Finance Department personnel contract issues and invite the town manager?
Go ahead. Okay. I move to find that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or a person involved at a substantial disadvantage pursuant to 1 V.S.A. section or paragraph or whatever that thing means, 313A1.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mary. All in favor?
Yep.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. Do we have a second motion?
Another one. We'll do that one too. Okay, I move to enter executive session under 1 V.S.A. section 313A1A to discuss a contract or contracts and to invite the interim town manager.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor? Unanimous. Time entered executive session is 9:35. Okay.
I understand we will see two.
We stop our
Recorded.
Voice. Okay. We have a motion.
I move to enter public session.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Pam. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. We're in public session at 9:47. There is no further business to come before this board, and we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Yes.
Second, Priscilla. All in favor? Priscilla, thank you. Unanimous. We are adjourned at 9:47. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
The recording